Committee on Homeland Security, Subcommittee on Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Protection will come to order. Without objection, the chair may declare the subcommittee in recess at any point. The purpose of this hearing is to receive testimony from industry experts on the national cybersecurity workforce. I now recognize Ranking Member Swalwell for the purposes of seeking unanimous consent.
Chair, I would seek unanimous consent that my colleague Yvette Clark be allowed to waive on for the purpose of this hearing.
Without objection, so ordered. I now recognize myself for an opening statement. Thank you all for joining us today for a discussion on my biggest priority as chairman of the subcommittee, addressing the cybersecurity workforce shortage. Over the last several months, this subcommittee has taken a broad look at the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, or CISA's, development since 2018 and its increasingly important role in mitigating risk across federal networks and critical infrastructure. But in order for CISA and any public or private entity, for that matter, to be successful in executing important mission, it must have a robust cybersecurity workforce. Some estimates say that the United States currently has more than 660,000 cyber job openings nationally. I've heard it almost as high as 750,000. So that's a lot. In addition to the overall shortage of cyber professionals, 61% of those who are employed say they are burned out after triaging years of major cyber incidents. Research from ISACA, a notable nonprofit organization that conducts an annual study of the state of cyber workforce, shows that 54% of government and military stakeholders believe a lack of skills and training are the top obstacle for attaining digital trust in an organization. I've said it before, and I will re-emphasize my belief that we need not only enough people, but the right people with the right skills in the right jobs to meet the growing cyber threat. In April, the FBI director testified to Congress that even if all FBI cyber agents and intel analysts focused on the China threat, Chinese hackers would still outnumber our FBI cyber personnel at least 50-1. That is extremely concerning. It is clear that the shortage of talent and burnout are issues that both the public and private sector face. Therefore, it is an issue we must tackle together. Our nation's cyber workforce challenges are widespread and must be addressed through a strategic and cross-cutting approach that avoids duplication. It's important for Congress to evaluate the appropriate roles and responsibilities for federal agencies and the private sector to develop the cyber workforce. I'm pleased to welcome 4 expert witnesses who can shed light on private sector efforts to move the needle forward. I hope to hear about what cyber workforce initiatives are successfully developing private sector talent and where improvements could be made. I'm specifically interested in hearing about creative models of education and training like apprenticeships and community college programs, and also about some of the efforts to quantify challenges we face and provide scalable solutions. These creative models from our witnesses and other leaders in the field will be key as we see increased demand for skill sets and emerging technologies such as AI. I encourage CISA to leverage the innovative initiatives of the private sector to grow the national cyber workforce at all levels via both traditional and non-traditional pathways. This hearing will be a starting point for our subcommittee to evaluate the current state of the national cybersecurity workforce and discuss solutions. As we anticipate the Office of National Cyber Director's National Cyber Workforce and Education Strategy, I hope to tease out specific areas where Congress can complement and build upon existing lines of effort across the federal government. I look forward to addressing this challenge in a bipartisan manner with my colleagues across the aisle. Thank you all again for being here today, and thank you for being great partners to the government in this endeavor. I now recognize the ranking member, the gentleman from California, Mr. Swalwell, for his opening statement.
Great. I thank the chairman for his leadership and focus on this area, and also want to welcome our witnesses. You sit at a table that many witnesses have bared witness to some of the most divisive, gridlocked, muddy issues that our country faces. But you are not among those witnesses because you are here for an issue where I don't think there's much daylight between my Republican colleagues and my Democratic colleagues. I think we understand this issue and want to know from you all what we can do together inside the Congress and together outside with stakeholders. And so it's an incredibly important topic, as the chairman said, and we're focused on addressing the shortage of trained cybersecurity professionals, which you all know is not a new problem, it's actually a growing problem. I represent 2 national laboratories, Lawrence Livermore and Sandia in Livermore, California, where I live. And we have heard from them and tech and cybersecurity firms about the tremendous challenge that they're facing every day in meeting their cyber needs. After engaging with a range of stakeholders in both the OT and IT spaces, I and my team have learned a lot about the complexity of the workforce challenge and the range of skill sets needed to ensure that we secure the network technologies we rely upon every day. Last Congress, I introduced and passed the Industrial Control Systems Cybersecurity Training Act, which authorized CISA's ICS training program, which was enacted into law as part of the National Defense Authorization Act. Through that program, CISA trains over 25,000 students every year, either in person or virtually, to secure the hardware and software used in water treatment facilities, power transmission and distribution, and other high-value critical infrastructure. As we look to build on and build out on previous work like the ICS bill, we must continue to expand the federal government's support for cybersecurity training, while also tailoring efforts to align with the skills needed by private sector employers. This hearing today will help our subcommittee gain a better understanding of the specific causes contributing to the cybersecurity workforce shortage and help us develop solutions going forward. As the White House works to finalize its national cyber workforce education strategy, it's critical that Congress can be an active partner in implementing policies and providing resources to expand the cyber talent pipeline and ensure we have the workforce necessary to maintain, as the chairman said, our advantage against adversaries who are outnumbering us, like China and Russia. Addressing this problem requires a coordinated approach that brings together multiple federal agencies, our nation's universities, community colleges, and too often, as we've seen, K through 12 schools, as well as the private sector. With CISA's extensive experience in public-private partnerships, I know it will have an important role as a part of this broader strategy, and the subcommittee stands ready to make sure it has authorities and resources necessary to play a role in the workforce shortage. Finally, the National Cybersecurity Strategy released earlier this year makes clear that addressing the lack of diversity in the workforce is, quote, both a moral necessity and a strategic importance. We simply will not be able to close the gap between employer demand and the available talent pool if we do not do more to bring women, people of color, immigrants, and other underrepresented groups into the cyber talent pipeline. Building a robust cyber workforce also presents an opportunity to train and leverage the talent of our veterans, who bring with them the experience, skill, and discipline that makes them an irreplaceable asset to any cybersecurity team. Look forward to hearing from the panel of witnesses, and again, I thank the chairman for what I think is going to be a very productive hearing. Yield back.
Thank you, Ranking Member Swalwell. Other members of the committee are reminded that opening statements may be submitted for the record. I am pleased to have 4 witnesses before us today to discuss this very important topic. I ask that our witnesses please rise and raise their right hand. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you will give before the Committee on Homeland Security of the United States House of Representatives will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Let the record reflect that the witnesses have answered in the affirmative. Thank you. Please be seated. I would now like to formally introduce our witnesses. Angelica Dorch is the Senior Director for the U.S. Government Affairs at SAP America. She manages the company's cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, and workforce policy portfolio. Dorch also spent 10 years working in the federal government, including in the Executive Office of the President as a Senior Technology Advisor, where she led the coordination of several government-wide cyber workforce initiatives. Bill Markow is the Vice President of Applied Research at Lightcast. He oversees Lightcast's consulting and research team focused on strategic workforce planning and the impact of emerging trends and technologies on the workforce. Mr. Markow leads the development of cyberseek.org, a cybersecurity workforce analytics and career platform to provide data on the cybersecurity workforce across the United States. Tara Wisniewski is the Executive Vice President for Advocacy, Global Markets, and Member Engagement at ISC2. She is responsible for leading growth of the ISC2 Global Advocacy Program and oversees the Association's Center for Cyber Safety and Education. Finally, Colonel Chris Starling is the Executive Director of Empower in California. In this role, he recruits and trains veterans, veteran spouses, and young adults in IT fundamentals and places them in IT jobs across California. Colonel Starling is a United States Marine Corps veteran with 26 years of active duty service. Thank you for your service, sir. Thank you all for being here today. Ms. Dorch, I now recognize you for 5 minutes to summarize your opening statement.
Thank you. Chairman Garbarino, Ranking Member Swalwell, and members of the Subcommittee on Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Protection, thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today to discuss the importance of growing our nation's cybersecurity talent pipeline. My name is Angelica Dorch, and I am the Senior Director of U.S. Government Affairs and Head of Cybersecurity Policy for SAP, the world's largest enterprise software application provider. On behalf of SAP, I commend the subcommittee for working together to highlight innovative approaches that address the long-standing challenges we face as a nation in developing, attracting, and retaining cybersecurity professionals. My testimony will address the role SAP plays in creating opportunities for current and future cybersecurity professionals and our commitment to help close the cybersecurity skills gap. Let me share some of our most recent achievements in this area. For over 50 years, SAP has worked to foster trust through responsible actions. As of 2023, the SAP Global Security Team has surpassed the national average of women working in cybersecurity, and it has more than doubled the number of women in cybersecurity management roles. Additionally, the generational diversity of the SAP Global Security Team is drastically different than that of the US federal government. Over 60% of the organization is comprised of millennial and Gen Z cybersecurity professionals. Meanwhile, only 4% of technology professionals in the US federal government are under the age of 30. Our Government Security and Secrecy Team, or GS2, is comprised of former national security professionals who spent upwards of 30 years working for the government. In the past 12 months alone, the GS2 team has grown 34% by attracting cleared national security professionals to SAP. Close to 40% of the team is made up of women, and they are only 7% away from reaching 50-50 gender parity of women in management roles. But how are we growing a diverse cybersecurity talent pipeline at SAP? I'll briefly highlight 3 programs. SAP established the Global Security Early Talent Program. This is a 2-year program that is designed for high-performing early career individuals with little to no professional experience. All participants conduct rotations in the US and abroad, and after completing the program, participants move into a new full-time role that best matches their skill sets and their interests. This model has expanded and diversified our pool of cybersecurity candidates, along with achieving higher rates of retention. Additionally, these types of rotational programs provide greater exposure and flexibility for young professionals to explore different specialties within this field rather than locking them into distinct roles or occupational series. Now at SAP, we view neurodiversity as a competitive advantage. And that's why in 2013, we launched a groundbreaking Autism at Work program, which leveraged the unique abilities and perspectives of colleagues on the spectrum to foster inclusion at SAP. We have the longest running Autism at Work program among major companies. We support neurodiverse professionals during the hiring process and offer a variety of resources to facilitate the success of employees once they are onboarded. But to help neurodiverse professionals realize their potential, most organizations must adjust their recruitment, selection, and career development policies to reflect a broader definition of talent. Lastly, SAP National Security Services, or NS2, an independent US subsidiary of SAP, established a nonprofit called NS2 Serves. This program was founded to support and empower veterans in their transition into critically needed national security roles. NS2 Serves is committed to train and place 600 veterans in national security careers by 2025. To date, we have trained over 400 veterans and achieved more than a 90% graduation rate. As a result, all graduates of NS2 Serves have gained job offers, and SAP NS2 will continue to make the necessary investments to provide veterans with a pathway into national security careers. In closing, it has been an honor to appear before the subcommittee today on behalf of SAP. It is my hope that my testimony supports the advancement of positive change that leads to a more secure nation. Thank you, Chairman Garbarino, Ranking Member Swalwell, and members of the subcommittee for your dedication to growing our nation's cybersecurity talent pipeline. I'd be happy to answer any of your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dorch. Mr. Marco, I now recognize you for 5 minutes to summarize your opening statement.
Chairman Garbarino, Ranking Member Swalwell, and members of the subcommittee, thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. As the lines between our physical and digital lives continue to blur, protecting our digital security has emerged as a defining challenge of our time. Although this challenge must be met by stakeholders across our nation, the ultimate responsibility for our digital security rests firmly on the shoulders of our cybersecurity workforce. However, this workforce faces persistent talent challenges that choke our cyber talent pipeline and hobble efforts to build the workforce we need to secure our digital infrastructure. It is against this backdrop that Lightcast has researched the cybersecurity workforce for over a decade. Lightcast is the leading global authority on the labor market, with over 20 years of experience providing best-in-class data and insights to thousands of educators, employers, government agencies, and other institutions. Throughout this time, our research has consistently pointed to a sobering conclusion. The cybersecurity talent pipeline is severely broken. In the past 12 months, there are over 660,000 cybersecurity job openings in the United States, but we only have 69 skilled cybersecurity workers for every 100 that employers demand. This means we are stepping onto the digital battlefield, missing nearly a third of our army, and the consequences of this talent shortage echo across our country. We find that this talent shortage stems from two critical gaps: a talent gap resulting from rapid growth and skill evolution in the field, and an expectations gap resulting from the belief among many employers that they must hire workers with inflated credentials or many years of work experience. These gaps have formed a perfect storm of market failures. As a result, fixing the cyber talent pipeline has become a problem of remarkable complexity, and solving this problem is impossible without shared visibility for all stakeholders into the needs of our cyber workforce. It was this need for shared visibility that catalyzed our development of cyberseek.org, a cybersecurity workforce exploration platform. Cyberseek includes a supply and demand heat map, cyber career pathways, and a map of local training providers, all of which are completely free to the public. Cyberseek also includes links to other resources and maps market data to the NICE Workforce Framework for Cybersecurity. Since its release, Cyberseek has become widely used within the cyber community, from students and professors to policymakers and hiring managers. Lightcast is proud to develop Cyberseek in partnership with NICE and CompTIA, thanks to funding through a grant from NIST. In addition to Cyberseek, Lightcast also supports cyber talent development by providing data, software, and consulting services directly to employers, educators, and other stakeholders working to grow our nation's pool of cybersecurity professionals. Our work across the cyber ecosystem gives us a unique vantage point on how the federal government may help strengthen the cybersecurity talent pipeline. In our view, there are three main levers that federal actors have at their disposal: information, incentives, and standards. In practice, this means that federal agencies such as CISA and NIST can share information about cyber training and hiring best practices, and federal employers can even become exemplars for innovative skills-based hiring, such as lowering job requirements, training for high growth and high value skills, and building career pathways to support internal advancement and mobility. The federal government can also offer incentives that improve the economics of growing the cyber workforce, such as joint training or talent sharing programs with private employers, or expanded access to tools, funding, tax incentives, or other resources. Lastly, the federal government can develop standards that detail best practices related to cyber workforce development, training, and hiring, as well as promote existing best-in-class standards such as the NICE framework. In conclusion, expanding the cybersecurity talent pipeline is undoubtedly a complex issue. It requires coordination across a constellation of educators, employers, and individuals. Aligning this diverse ecosystem of stakeholders requires a shared understanding of the problem and clear, level-headed guidance on how to solve it. Thankfully, thousands of stakeholders across the country are already facing this challenge head-on, and Lightcast is committed to working with these stakeholders, and we welcome collaboration with anyone interested in creative, data-backed solutions to cybersecurity's talent pipeline challenges. Thank you again for the opportunity to participate in this hearing, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you, Ms. Marco. Ms. Wisniewski, I now recognize you for 5 minutes to summarize your opening statement.
Thank you, Chairman Garbarino, Ranking Member Swalwell, and members of the subcommittee for the invitation to testify on the National Cybersecurity Workforce Pipeline. We at ISC2 appreciate the opportunity to share our perspective on the current state of the cybersecurity workforce and our vision for its future. ISC2 is an international nonprofit association with 425,000 members focused on advancing a safe and secure cyber world. Best known for our acclaimed CISSP certification, ISC2 offers a portfolio of credentials that are part of a holistic, pragmatic approach to security and built on strong ethical foundations. Organizations are increasingly aware of the vital importance of resilient cyber systems, leading to more demand for cyber talent as threats expand. Our annual cybersecurity workforce study assesses the size of the current workforce and looks for ways to address the existing talent shortage. Our 2022 study found there is a worldwide gap of 3.4 million cybersecurity workers. ISC2 is currently in the process of collecting and analyzing data for our 2023 cybersecurity workforce study, which will be released in September. In our early findings, we estimate there are 132,000 new entrants into the U.S. cybersecurity workforce, an 11% increase from 2022. But at the same time, our data shows the workforce gap will be over 480,000, which is a 17% increase from last year. One of the most critical investments ISC2 has made to grow the workforce is development of a new entry-level certification called the ISC2 Certified in Cybersecurity, or CC. This certification allows those with little to no cybersecurity experience to gain the foundational knowledge and skills necessary for an entry-level cybersecurity role. It also provides an entry point for aspiring cyber professionals to begin their career and launch them into their first job. Because we believe so deeply in the importance of providing access to the profession, we have launched a campaign called 1 Million Certified in Cybersecurity, where we are delivering 1 million CC courses and exams for free. Half of these course enrollments and exams are reserved for students of historically Black colleges and universities, minority-serving institutions, members of tribal organizations, veterans, women, and neurodiverse individuals. We made this commitment during the Cyber Workforce and Education Summit at the White House last summer, and are pleased to report that more than 200,000 future cyber professionals are already enrolled. We commend the Biden administration for its work on the 2023 National Cybersecurity Strategy, particularly the strategy's focus on enhancing the cybersecurity workforce. We are also excited about the forthcoming workforce strategy from the Office of the National Cyber Director and appreciate the focus the subcommittee is giving to this very important issue. Yet we know that for these strategies to be implemented effectively, it will take all federal agencies, including CISA, working together with the private sector to deliver impactful change. Innovative strategies are necessary to professionalize and build the cybersecurity sector. In that vein, we encourage Congress to consider a few recommendations. First, we must provide pathways for entry-level practitioners to join the cybersecurity field. ISC2's Certified in Cybersecurity certification responds to this problem, yet there is so much more to be done. We know we cannot create the talent pipeline to bridge our current gap until the cybersecurity ecosystem of government, industry, academia, and organizations like ISC2 hire and invest in the professional development of entry-level professionals. Second, we must increase diversity. We know that diversity within an organization adds to the overall confidence of an organization's security posture because highly diverse teams directly contribute to greater success and prosperity. We also know from our research that organizations with DEI programs in place have smaller workforce gaps. Yet despite these findings, meaningful progress to deliver more diversity, equity, and inclusivity in the cybersecurity profession has been slow. Additionally, there is a need to facilitate collaboration with public and private sector entities. CISA's sustained long-term commitment to the sector provides us with a natural partnership in this area. Working together, we can provide more cyber readiness resources across all levels and roles in the public and private sector. And finally, we must professionalize cybersecurity. A digitally skilled population and strong cyber workforce leads to more resilient organizations and infrastructure. Certifications are a critical part of this work, including ensuring cyber professionals hold certifications built on strong ethical foundations and accredited by international standard bodies. Thank you again for the opportunity to testify before the subcommittee today. ISC2 looks forward to working with you on this very important issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wisniewski. Colonel Starling, I now recognize you for 5 minutes to summarize your opening statement.
Chairman Garbarino, Ranking Member Swalwell, distinguished members of the committee, thank you for having me here today. Since 2019, I've had the privilege to lead NPower California, and since last year, the NPower Skill Bridge program. NPower is a nonprofit that provides veterans and young adults from underrepresented communities with tech training, social support, and full-time job placement assistance. NPower operates in 9 states and is still growing. We serve over 1,300 unemployed and underemployed students per year nationwide. Our program is free of charge to all who enroll, and they represent 75% ethnic minorities, and as of recent, 39% women in our courses. Tech is a main driver of the U.S. economy, and the tech sector is still predicted to grow faster than all other occupations. But people are not entering the field fast enough, especially in cybersecurity. Cybersecurity demand is outpacing supply. Many companies still seek applicants that have college degrees, but this is changing. Industry-recognized certifications can qualify people to work in tech and in cybersecurity. Access to high-growth tech careers is possible for more people now than it has been in past years, and NPower has a model that works. How's it done? First, we recruit those that are hard to find. We seek people in transition that are passionate about technology and who are willing to commit themselves to 16 weeks or more of training. Second, we understand that some people need help, not just in the classroom to learn the material, but with life. NPower's team of social support managers provides wraparound services by connecting students with local resources to help them solve everyday problems. Things like rent, subsistence, transportation, interviewing attire, even childcare, so that students can focus on learning and earning certifications. NPower creates the conditions that enable students to leverage their own grit and determination. This boot camp model drives change in both their personal and their professional lives. Upon completion of the course, job placement teams from NPower engage each graduate personally, making introductions, helping them schedule job interviews, and helping them actually land a tech job. Let me address some metrics quickly. 85% of NPower students complete training on time and graduate. 88% of graduates secure at least one industry-recognized credential. 81% of graduates are placed into quality employment or enrolled in continuing education at the 6-month mark and 1-year mark after graduation. The average wage increase for our tech fundamentals students is from $9,000 a year pre-program to over $43,000 per year post-program. That's a 420% increase in wages. For cybersecurity graduates of our program, their post-program wage average is $63,000 a year in a starting cybersecurity job. In 2021, the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Support Agency, CISA, awarded NPower a $1 million grant to develop cyber workforce training in order to address the shortage in cybersecurity workforce. As you know, CISA supports non-traditional job training and apprenticeship programs. They recently started to hire people with certificates in lieu of degrees. I would submit that if it's good enough for CISA, then it can also work for federal, state, local, and other governments. The NPower program that was funded by CISA is working. And in the current course, our spring 2023 cohort, it's in week 18 with a 92% retention rate. That's 18 weeks of pretty rigorous cyber boot camp with 55 of 60 students set to graduate. Our written testimony contains 6 recommendations, but I'd like to just touch on 2. First, copying the CISA model is worthwhile. We can train and place non-traditional talent into open cyber jobs. Second, capitalizing on the talent pool of military-connected individuals and families, including transitioning military service members, is easy. It's natural to retrain people from defending the nation to defending the network. In summary, NPower has a model that's scalable for creating a diverse cybersecurity workforce. We are partnering with Homeland Security, Department of Labor, and the Department of Defense. My recommendation is to build on these successes and continue to press the attack. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Colonel. Members will be recognized by owner seniority for their 5 minutes of questioning. An additional round of questioning may be called after all members have been recognized. I now recognize the chairman of the Subcommittee on Transportation and Maritime Security, my friend from Florida, Carlos Jimenez.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate it. And I'm intrigued by what you said, Colonel, about not needing a college degree. And so I believe that somehow this country, if you don't have a college degree, is somehow stigmatized, that somehow you may not be as smart as somebody who has a college degree. As somebody who didn't get a college degree until I was about 46 years old, I guess I must have been pretty dumb until then, okay? But somehow it didn't hold me back, you know? I'm here in Congress for some reason. I must be lucky. You said, how long does it take, let's say, you said 16 weeks of training. In 16 weeks of training, you can get somebody up and running to get into the cybersecurity space. Is that correct?
We have 2 courses. The first is Tech Fundamentals. That's 16 weeks. Our advanced course in cyber is 18 weeks after that. We like to take people that have 0 experience to get them into a help desk or a junior systems admin role first. You can't take a soldier from boot camp and make him a special forces. So there's a lot of training. So
16 and
weeks
18,
for Tech Fundamentals and 18
even
weeks
for
cyber.
non-college graduates, 34 weeks?
That's
Okay.
right.
34 weeks versus 4 years. What's the starting pay?
We are starting people from cybersecurity at about $63,000. And for the Tech Fundamentals role, national average is about 43. Out in California, I get them about 50 to 55 starting salary.
What's their career path? How much what's their earning potential?
I've got people making over $100,000 a year after 3 years. You got to go in and do the work.
And how much does it cost for the course?
It costs about $7,000, $7,500 per person to get me a person through the course.
16 or 34, the whole 34?
That's either course, the 16 weeks or the 18-week course. We're mainly paying for instructors and we're paying for certifications.
You said it was 16 and 18, or is it 16?
16 for Tech Fundamentals, 18 for the cybersecurity.
That's on top of the 16?
That's on top of the 16 weeks, right?
Okay, so 7 and 7, $14,000?
Yes.
Versus $500,000 to go to college, and then paying back $500,000 for the rest of your career, and you end up probably getting the same job. Would that be accurate or not?
That's definitely true.
Okay, sounds like a deal to me. I think we need to start, letting people know about this. The other thing that I'm thinking about is artificial intelligence. All right. It seems to me that artificial intelligence could go a long way in providing cybersecurity. I don't know who can answer this. Am I right or am I wrong on that?
I'm happy to take that question.
Sure.
We believe that it's going to change the cyber workforce. It's not going to eliminate the cyber workforce. If anything, it probably will create even more opportunities. I know that there's been quite a bit of media coverage, especially lately, ChatGPT. Our position is that it is another emerging technology and one that needs to be managed, but also embraced. And that it actually is not a threat to the cyber workforce. If anything, it's just the problem is going to get worse, not better.
No, I can see that because you can use IA to defend yourself and you can use IA to attack somebody. So it's going to be a battle of IAs, and people are going to have to, I guess, monitor the battle.
Yes, absolutely. Monitor and manage.
Monitor and manage the battle. And then whoever has the brightest IA is going to win at the end.
Potentially. I think that there's still a lot of unknowns about the technology, and that's, I think, driving quite a bit of the media storm right now, but it is still a really important technology. And then, of course, there's quantum coming right behind it.
Yeah, and look, we had discussions with some folks that were working in that space, and I asked them the question of where AI was. Where is artificial intelligence? If you're 21 years old and that means that you're a really bright person, I mean, you're now mature and all that, where is AI? They refused to answer the question as far as what the age was. They did tell me, though, that it was in the 3rd inning. So it's 1/3 of the way there. And it's pretty amazing what it can do right now. So when it finally gets fully developed, it's going to be something. So Yeah, thank you for the testimony. Now I think we need to see if we can push, high school kids, our veterans, et cetera, to go into this field without having to go deeply in debt and make a really good career. So thank you and I appreciate the testimony. I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. I now recognize Mr. Menendez from New Jersey for 5 minutes of questioning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Ranking Member, for convening today's meeting. To all our witnesses, thank you for coming. Colonel Starling, as you explained in your testimony, NPower received a $1 million grant from CISA as part of a pilot program to support non-traditional cybersecurity training to reach underrepresented groups. From the statistics you shared today, it appears you have achieved significant success in retaining students, helping them achieve cybersecurity certifications, and placing them in cybersecurity jobs. This is a pilot program. How do you think this program can be scaled up to reach a larger number of individuals?
We're actually scaling it already. And just to clarify, our program is...
How so?
So first of all, we've got our advanced program. It's a nationwide program, so we're in 9 states right now. But the best students of those rise up and take either a cloud or a cyber course. And I recently launched last year NPower Skill Bridge. And what I'm able to do, I'm a DoD partner. I'm allowed to go on military bases, recruit people within their last 6 months of active duty service. With command approval, they come to my cybersecurity class, and I can ramp them up in 10 weeks' time during their last 3 to 6 months on active duty, full-time class. I can ramp them up to get CompTIA, Security Plus, with the option of getting also Linux Plus. Those are your 2 key certifications for cyber. From then on, you can add to that. But we're already growing this program, and we're going to have more instructors and more cyber courses available. We are a nonprofit, so the training is free to all those who come to our class. But I got to go out and raise the money as a nonprofiteer. That's my hard job. I get some grants from the state of California. I get some grants from different corporations. So it really is a public-private venture to solve this problem.
Sure, so scalability would be a matter of resources. But the program itself is working, right?
That's correct.
Okay, appreciate that. Ms. Dorch, a report last year estimated that over 30% of the federal government's cyber workforce is over the age of 55. In your testimony, you explained how SAP has managed to have 60% of its cybersecurity workforce be millennials or Gen Z. From your perspective, what are the keys to recruiting a younger workforce? How can the federal government learn from the private sector to bring in young cyber workers so we're prepared with the cyber workforce of the future?
Thank you for the question. I think there's 2 elements to this. For SAP, DEI, or diversity, equity, and inclusion, is a part of our DNA. So we have to be intentional about the goals we're setting, being public about it, setting them, holding ourselves accountable, and being transparent about where we are. So we do that and definitely publicize where we're going in terms of our talent globally, and committing to making sure that everybody has an equal opportunity to develop, engage, and grow in the cyberspace. We do believe our early talent program really helps in terms of engaging young talent. It's a very quick program. We actually have a cohort starting in July, and literally probably within 90 days, these kids will have access to our Newtown Square facility in Pennsylvania. They'll do rotational programs. I think one thing I will add, and you'll hear me use the word flexibility. These kids need flexibility. You can't sit them and say, you're just gonna be a cyber defense analyst and that's it. This rotational program is key to allowing them to see the different areas, specialties, roles that they can look at, not only in America, but we also allow them to go abroad to our global headquarters in Waldorf, Germany, to look at what the opportunities are there, but also look at how we can work internationally. Cyber is an international, it's a global problem, and we have to work with our allies to address these issues. So for us, it's a global partnership with our allies, and making sure that we're doing this on a global scale to educate folks that this is not just a US issue, this is a global issue. And again, making sure that young talent has the flexibility to figure out what their interests are and what skill sets align, so then when they get the full-time role that we offer them, they know where they will fit best and can engage there.
Yeah, I appreciate that from SAP. We want to keep the talent here. But it seems the flexibility, and within this, not just acknowledging that cybersecurity is this growing industry, but within it, it provides a variety of opportunities. Building the next generation of cyber talent will require us to educate about cybersecurity at a young age. With the CTAP program, CISA has taken important steps in helping to develop curricula and provide training to K through 12 teachers. Ms. Wisniewski, as you have deployed your new entry-level CC certification, to what extent have you seen recent high school graduates demonstrate an interest in the program, and to what extent do they have the existing skills to obtain the certification?
Thank you for the question. We believe that actually for the entry level, so similar to Colonel Starling, that there is not a need for a four-year degree, right? And so these students can go right into, they've got the early credential and they're ready. However, that does not mean that the private sector doesn't have to continue to invest in them. And that's, I think, a really important point. There's a lot of work to be done around for hiring managers to understand what actually are the right credentials for the right job. So we often see our CISSP, which is a globally de facto standard. It requires 5 years experience, endorsement, et cetera. We often see that on entry-level job description, and that doesn't match. And so we have a lot of work to do. So it's not only about getting more people in, but there's a lot of work to do to bring the private sector to the table as well.
For sure. Appreciate that answer and yield back. Thank you.
Gentleman yields back. I now recognize Mr. Zell from Mississippi for 5 minutes of questioning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Colonel, I was very interested in what you were telling us, and I think that's something that we need to work hard as, because everybody understands the threat that's coming at us right now on a daily basis. And we had a round table this morning discussing some of these things, and so I want to thank each and every one of you for your hard work. I too was 37 years old before I got my degree, and when I got out of high school, I went straight to work. And as I progressed in my career, I realized the importance of getting a college degree and what it meant to me and to where we are today. But one of the things that I would like to ask you a little bit about is on your recruiting. Is this a nationwide recruiting? Tell me about your recruiting and who you're reaching out to and how are you reaching out to them?
Yes, sir. So right now, we are located in 9 different states, and our recruiting is focused toward those communities that we're in, such as Baltimore, San Jose, California, Detroit, Michigan. We're recruiting there. Now, we can, when we go to the next level, that's tech fundamentals. When we go to the next level, we recruit nationwide. The training is instructor-led and online, so they're accountable, and we try to actually get people together physically from time to time for either the professional development or something that requires hands-on training. So the Skill Bridge program that I run for Department of Defense, with the Department of Defense, is nationwide. I've got people in Korea, in Germany, they're signed up for the class, they log in, it's instructor-led, and they've got to keep pace with the curriculum. So right now, this has the ability to scale nationwide very easily.
What about rural Mississippi? As if you can tell. Well,
Sir, we can definitely discuss that. We'd love to be down in this. I'd like to be in all 50 states.
okay. Well, I would like to help you get there. We have a diverse workforce in Mississippi. We have some of the largest industry out there. And one of the things that I was thinking about was in my state of Mississippi, we have if you look across the nation, our workforce is retiring, our police officers are retiring, and in the state of Mississippi, you can work 25 years as a police officer or a teacher or somebody that works for the state and who is very still capable of entering this workforce and would be an asset. I know we want to get our young kids out there, but old guys we can still work too. So I would really like to see that the focus to target some of these people who are retiring from state jobs, who are still in their 40s, that could give you 20 years of work, who are educated in the world of getting up and going to work every day. So I would really like to work with you and each of you to help get this going, because we know the threats out there. We know that we've all talked about the shortage of the workforce, the challenges that you have. And I really think that we could come together on this as everybody could to get this done. So would any of you like to just add a few words to some of the things we're talking about?
Thank you, Congressman. I will add, I think, we talked about our commitment to creating an early talent pipeline, but we also, with our government security and secrecy team, it's very clear that we need professionals, seasoned professionals, especially in the national security space. As my opening statement mentioned, I mean, we have folks who have been in that sector for 30 years that we attract to SAP and find value. And I think part of this is making sure that they stay connected to the missions that they previously were in. But there is the challenge of making sure that when we onboard folks, that we also make sure that they continue to develop and grow within our ecosystem. And that's something we're committed to at SAP, and would be happy to follow up with you on other ways we can look at upskilling and reskilling folks into cybersecurity roles.
Thank you very much. Colonel or anybody else would like to say anything?
If I may, I'd love to add to what you were saying about the need to reskill existing workers and find new opportunities to bring seasoned workers into the field. Mathematically, it's an absolute necessity for us to do that if we're going to close the talent gap. Even if we magically assumed that every single computer and information science graduate at any degree level went into cybersecurity, we would still need at least 200,000 additional people. So we're going to have to find ways to redeploy and reskill existing workers if we're going to close that talent gap within any human timescale. And so being able to give clear guidance both to individuals but also to their employers about how to reskill those people and how to find the right pools of workers who can most readily and rapidly be redeployed into cybersecurity is one of the most important things we can do to help grow the cyber workforce, leveraging existing workers. And Lightcast is also more than happy to work with you to try to make that a reality.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. I now recognize the ranking member, Mr. Swalwell, for 5 minutes for any questions.
Great, thank you. Colonel Starling, first, I just want to thank you for your 3 combat tours that you did for our country in the Marines. If that's all you did to serve our country, that would be enough, but here you are working to get veterans placed into jobs, and really appreciate that. With respect to Empower, and you went through with my colleague, Mr. Jimenez, what the cost structure is. Are those students, are they eligible for financial aid?
Yes, most of them are. We look for so we have veterans and young adults. Veterans and veteran spouses can be any age, any place. The young adults, we're looking for 18 to 26-year-olds and at 200% of the poverty line or lower, right? So that's mainly the socioeconomic group. Now, we might make an exception here or there if somebody's close, but that's what we're really looking for to pull them out of a situation of poverty. And mixing veterans with young adults, about 50-50 in the class, is the great thing. The veterans about 8 to 10 years older, they have some life experience. And I tell them, I need your post-traumatic strength. You might have worked in a combat zone. These young people still live in one in some cases. And so veterans and young adults is an amazing thing, and that's what makes me happy to get up and work every morning.
And is that financial aid through FAFSA, like public financial aid, or is it private aid that they have to?
Some of them would be eligible for that, but we don't take any money. Our program is 100% free, and especially for veterans, I tell them your GI Bill is gold. You save that for college when you're ready to go. But some of them need a job now to feed their families. So getting through a 16-week boot camp and then working at a place. We've got people at the San Francisco Giants, at Lawrence Berkeley Labs, some good jobs.
Hey, they're in second place right now, by the way.
Yeah.
They're climbing. According to the survey last year, it's June. It is June. It's true. According to a survey last year by ISACA, 60% of cybersecurity professionals reported difficulties retaining cyber talent. And this is at a time that we have a tremendous shortage in the cybersecurity workforce. Keeping existing workers in the field must be a part of that equation, of course. Mr. Marco, to what extent does your data show a problem with employee retention in the cyber workforce? And are there challenges limited to employees moving between jobs, or is there a problem with workers leaving the cyber workforce entirely?
Thank you for the question. Our data definitely do show that there are retention problems within the cybersecurity workforce. Consistently, cybersecurity workers leave more frequently than many other roles, even within information technology, which is already rife with many hiring challenges due to talent shortages. And I think that there are also some unique challenges that are arising from the way that employers are hiring for cybersecurity workers in the first place. I think we've already talked about it some today, but many employers are effectively cutting out the entry-level rung into cybersecurity and saying you must have a bachelor's or master's degree. They're saying you must have at least 3 to 5 years of prior work experience. And I usually liken that to hiring mercenaries. You're looking for somebody who already has the skills you're looking for, that you think you need to perform the job. But in many cases, those are the people who everybody else is looking for. And it just becomes a game of poaching from one employer and poaching from another for a very small pool of workers that have this mythical set of unicorn skills. And the companies that we actually see with the best retention rates are the ones that are taking more of a skills-based approach to hiring as opposed to a credential-based approach to hiring. So if we look at companies that are hiring workers with less than a bachelor's degree, they have better retention rates. If we look at companies that are hiring more diverse workforce, they have better retention rates. And so one of the things that we try to educate employers on is to not cut out that entry-level rung of opportunity and to make sure that your talent pipeline has as wide an aperture as possible so that you're bringing in more diverse candidates, so that you're bringing in the workers who don't have a bachelor's degree. And as a matter of fact, you're actually seeing better outcomes as a result. And so I think that being able to communicate that to employers and speaking in their language, saying you will see the return on your investment by making some of these changes and taking a skills-based approach to hiring can go a long way towards solving some of those retention challenges.
And Ms. Dortch, briefly, what are you doing to increase retention?
Just to add on, I think part of this is, again, flexibility. We're also looking at making sure fair pay and compensation, making sure we're competitive there. Mental health is something we talk about, burnout, and making sure that that's prioritized. And we're always pulsing our employees every quarter to see how they are feeling and what we need to do to make adjustments in the work with our work conditions. And then also a big piece for us is cyber professionals at SAP can take part in our Global Technology Fellowship. So if they want to explore other options, they certainly can. We encourage them to do so.
Thank you. Yield back.
Thank you. Gentleman yields back. I now recognize Ms. Lee from Florida for 5 minutes of questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you all for being here today. This has been such an illuminating and important conversation for us to have. So I represent Florida's 15th Congressional District, and it is home to the University of South Florida, which has been working hard to ensure that we have the cyber talent, that we're developing young people to come in and work in these industries. The Florida Center for Cybersecurity at USF serves as a resource for us to enhance our cybersecurity education, facilitate research, conduct outreach initiatives in the community. And there are 2 particular education initiatives there that I want to mention. One is designed to address the workforce shortage and build our pipeline. CyberWorks, which provides a 19-week curriculum to first responders, veterans, and other qualified participants to prepare for industry-recognized certifications and career opportunities. And the second, Operation K-12, offers cybersecurity career prep and certification courses for high school students, professional development for teachers, lesson plans, and summer camps for elementary, middle, and high school students. They're both designed to expand the talent pipeline so that we can meet the roughly 34,000 cybersecurity job vacancies that we have in Florida right now. So, I've been so interested to hear the innovative ways that each of you are describing developing that workforce above and beyond the 4-year college degree. And I want to start with you, Mr. Marco. Would you talk about go back to the value and utility of certifications, specialized certifications and training? Obviously, we love our university graduates as well, but how those certifications and training can help build our workforce, and are there certain types of certifications that stand out to you as being the most useful or constructive in addressing our current workforce shortage?
Thank you for the question. When it comes to certifications, I think that they are most effective when they are an effective proxy for proficiency in the skills that employers most value. So we see that the certifications that really communicate that to employers are the ones that are aligned with the both foundational skills that are most needed within a field, but also some of the high growth, high value skills that employers value the most as well. Or they at least communicate to employers that this worker has built the foundational knowledge to rapidly learn those new skills. We also see that there are different roles that certifications can play at different levels of somebody's career. So there are some entry-level certifications such as Security Plus and a number of others that are very effective at helping to open the door for many workers to enter into cybersecurity. But we also see that there are many more advanced level certifications, such as CISSP, that are very good at communicating to employers that somebody is an expert in the field. Now, the challenge that we also see, though, is we need to educate employers to be responsible recruiters of these certifications.
That's perfect. You actually just anticipated my next question, which is, do you feel like this message is getting to employers? Do you feel like they're recognizing the value of these certifications? What are you doing, or what can we do to try to help ensure that employers, too, are recruiting effectively to find this talent?
It's a great question. I think that what we really need to do is to communicate to employers the role that each of these certifications plays and the skills that each of these certifications actually serve as an effective proxy for. This was mentioned earlier that often CISSP is requested in entry-level openings. That's actually not just a rare anecdote. We actually seen about 20% of job openings calling for a CISSP. They also ask for fewer than 2 years of work experience. So I think that to really educate employers on the skills and the level that each of these certifications are effective proxies for is one of the most important things we can do to make sure that employers are responsible recruiters of cybersecurity certifications.
And is there anything more that you perceive that we as Congress could be doing to help either foster the development of this talent pool or help get qualified people into the right placements?
So I think that one of the most important things that Congress or the federal government more generally could do is to really help to educate employers through clear standards around skills-based hiring and around the types of practices, the hiring best practices that they should be taking. I know we've talked a lot about what the supply side educators can do, and I think that there are many fantastic initiatives already underway on that side that can be built upon. But I also think that less has been done to educate employers on how to be responsible recruiters and how to take a skills-based approach to growing their cyber talent pipeline, and to give them the tools that they need and the standards that they need to know how to do that within their organizations.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. I now recognize myself for 5 minutes of questioning. Ms. Dortch, we've heard about the many things that SAP is doing, and I've heard from other industry leaders all the great things that the private sector is doing to address cyber workforce challenges. Do you think these efforts should be coordinated?
We absolutely feel that these should be coordinated. If you look at what the European Union is doing right now with the establishment of their cybersecurity academy, they are really centralizing a lot of their efforts across the EU member states to build it on a platform, but also making sure that there's funding available. So finding the credentials, providing training for folks who are raising their hands to get trained, but also the jobs. They want to make sure that people know where the job opportunities are. So it's really about making sure that we have a centralized place for training. If I really just type in a search engine, how do I get into cybersecurity? It should take me to a search engine to find something that's affordable that I can get into. And then once I'm done, I should be able to find a centralized job database, whether it's USA Jobs or another place to find the job that matches my skill sets based off the certification program. But I do think the US has the opportunity to do that. We're starting to see that with CyberSeek. I think we can do a lot more, but I do think the Europeans are getting a little bit ahead and playing a more strategic game, and I think the US can definitely get there if we can put more concerted effort around centralizing these resources, making it easier for Americans to get upskilled or reskilled into cybersecurity roles.
And my next question was going to be, should the federal government be doing anything? Because sometimes we shouldn't. We should let you all do your thing. But it sounds like, funding, training platform similar to what the EU is doing might be the best way to handle it from what you just said?
Definitely that, and then we would urge Congress to support the Jobs Act, which provides short-term Pell Grants for programs, boot camps that are cybersecurity focused. That again, if there's 8 to 12-week programs for critically needed roles, we do think that that might be an option. Understanding we need to make sure that there's accountability, that there are actual matriculation into jobs is really important with that. We do think that that might be a tactic that Congress should look into, the Jobs Act.
Thank you. It's very big, that Jobs Act, so I like that you focused on the Pell Grant section. Mr. Markow, workforce shortages are persistent across all 16 critical infrastructure sectors. CyberSeek is able to procure job opening data across all those sectors, allowing potential job seekers to get an industry-specific preview of what their market looks like. In your view, what industries in the private sectors have taken effective steps and proactively addressed their cyber workforce shortage?
It's a good question, and I think that I will say there are employers across all sectors that have taken some very proactive steps. If I were to try and generalize across different sectors, I would say that the financial services sector has been a leader in many cases. I think that out of necessity, due to the sensitivity of the data and the information that they have, many organizations in financial services have been very proactive in trying to build their cybersecurity workforces and to really work collaboratively with educators, policymakers, and others. We've also seen some very effective examples across even retail, information, and some energy companies as well, who are very focused on building a pipeline of talent that they can manage in the same way that they would manage any of their supply chains. And they're taking ownership over developing their own cybersecurity talent, working collaboratively with, again, educators, policymakers, nonprofits, and other stakeholders in their communities. So again, there are very good examples across a number of different sectors, but I think that those are some of the industries that we've seen some of the more proactive approaches.
I appreciate that. And in your testimony, you mentioned public-private partnerships as potential incentives to push individuals, educators, employers, and other stakeholders to help strengthen the cybersecurity talent pipeline. Many states have experimented with programs to improve these outcomes as well. Are there any potential programs that have proven to be significantly effective at recruiting and retaining cyber workforce, and what programs at the state level could serve as a bellwether for future programs?
It's a great question, and I think transparently a lot of these programs are still relatively new. So they might also still be in the third inning, so we're still looking for more outcomes data. That said, there have been some initial promising results from things like Tech Cred in Ohio. Not sure if you're familiar with that, but it is a program that in which Ohio employers are able to receive some funding and tax credits to support training their existing workers in industry-recognized credentials. So this enables them to more readily upskill and reskill their existing workforce and to solve that problem of how do we bring in fresh blood as rapidly as possible. It's by investing in your existing workforce. And so that's one program that has shown some promise. This is actually not a state program. It's actually something DHS has done as well, is to pilot some talent sharing programs with employers, private employers. And I think that can be potentially an effective way to solve the chicken and egg problem of how do you build more experienced workers when employers primarily only want to hire somebody who already has experience. And so if CISA can help to reduce some of the friction for training the entry-level workers and giving them on-the-job opportunities, either in DHS or in the private sector, then that can both help to solve that chicken and egg problem of how do you bring fresh blood into the industry and how do you make employers more incentivized to hire entry-level workers. But it also helps to facilitate sharing of skills and cross-pollination between both the public and private sector, which can have benefits to the actual productivity of your workers and the security of our digital infrastructure, both in the public and private sector.
Thank you. My time has expired. I now recognize the gentlelady from New York, the former chairwoman of this committee, Ms. Clark.
Good morning. Let me start by first thanking Chairman Garbarino and Ranking Member Swalwell for allowing me to waive onto the subcommittee for this important hearing on growing our nation's cybersecurity talent pipeline. And thank you to our panel of esteemed witnesses for joining us today. One of the most persistent challenges we face today in strengthening our nation's cybersecurity posture has been the ongoing shortage of trained cybersecurity professionals. Addressing this shortfall has been a priority of mine as chairwoman of the Cybersecurity Subcommittee last Congress, and I'm heartened to see that it remains a priority for this committee in the 118th. I'm also proud to say that while we still have a ways to go, over the past 2.5 years, Congress and the Biden administration have taken important steps to increase investment in our cyber workforce and do so in an inclusive way. For instance, the National Cyber Director is currently working to develop a cybersecurity workforce strategy so that we can ensure agencies across the federal government are coordinating their efforts to address this challenge. I've been pleased by the administration's engagement with industry and academia in developing this strategy. I look forward to seeing how Congress and this subcommittee can help further support these efforts in the coming months. While this new strategy will be essential to ensuring our cyber workforce efforts have clear goals without inefficient redundancies, Congress and the administration are already working to implement important programs that will make sure there's a difference in building a larger and more diverse cyber workforce. I am pleased to see that Empower, a national nonprofit based in Brooklyn, New York, that is dedicated to supporting the digital careers of veterans and young people from underserved communities, is represented on the panel today. And I look forward to seeing the long-term fruits of this program and learning how we can further scale up to train more women and people of color for cybersecurity careers. In the CHIPS and Science Act enacted last year, Congress established the Dr. David Satcher Cybersecurity Education Grant Program based on legislation that I co-sponsored. This program authorizes NIST to provide grants to support cybersecurity training in historically Black colleges and universities and other minority-serving institutions. If we're going to meaningfully address the lack of diversity in the cyber workforce, we must ensure that HBCUs and MSIs have the capacity to provide high-quality cybersecurity training to their students, and ensuring this grant program has the funding to be effective and must be prioritized. So my first question is for Ms. Dortch and Ms. Wisniewski. In your organization's partnerships with HBCUs and MSIs, what are the benefits you've seen from developing the next generation of cyber professionals at these institutions? And how important do you see building cybersecurity education capacity at HBCUs and MSIs?
Thank you, Ms. Clark, for the question. We actually have had an incredible reception at HBCUs in terms of really embracing this topic. And we're pleased, actually, we were just invited by the board of the United Negro College Fund to actually attend a conference in Atlanta this summer to really kind of dig in, right? I think that it's really important that the HBCUs in particular take a leadership role here, because the reality is, on the academic front, cyber is actually a very young academic discipline. And so there's an opportunity for leadership, and I think it's totally appropriate at HBCUs. One of the things we've also learned recently is that security in general at HBCUs is an important thing for people to think about. And so having a robust cyber profile at an HBCU is not only important for the students that they're pushing through a certain program, but also just for the university as well. So we think that there's incredible opportunity, and we also think that we can't do this without HBCUs and MSIs. I mean, it's just absolutely critical.
I'll just quickly add, for SAP, our University Alliances program, which is 25 years old, we really value our partnerships with MSIs and historically Black universities. We established what's called SAP Project Propel at certain HBCUs to make sure that kids have exposure to organizations like SAP. We can get them micro-credentials that may not be cyber-specific, but get them exposure and ready to see opportunities in the cybersecurity space. I also want to commend the National Science Foundation for taking the opportunity to study the success rates that are happening for African Americans in the STEM pipeline. It's really important that we understand what tactics they're using to encourage kids to get into STEM, especially cybersecurity. SAP has encouraged the Office of the National Cyber Director to potentially work with NSF to explore this specifically for cybersecurity. How can we matriculate more African American students out of historically Black universities into cybersecurity graduate programs?
Mr. Chairman, I yield back. Thank you.
Gentlelady yields back. We're now going to start our second round of questions. I recognize Mr. Jimenez from Florida for 5 minutes for his second round.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Question for Mr. Markow. You stated that some companies look for college graduates and are looking for the same people, and then they're mercenaries. They basically are there looking for a great job, but then as soon as they get there, probably looking for the next job, seeing if they can go higher and higher and higher, because there's a small pool of them. Do you find that some of those companies, or most of those companies that are looking for these college graduates, et cetera, they're college graduates themselves?
That definitely is more common. I would hesitate to pigeonhole and say that it's always going to be companies that have a large proportion of existing bachelor's level graduates. That said, we do see that heightened degree requirements are most common in regions and industries that have the highest proportion of people with a college degree. So we do see evidence in the data that people with a college degree are more likely to also look for somebody with a college degree, although it's not going to be across the board the case.
A different kind of discrimination then, huh?
Well, I'll hesitate to opine on the reason for it, but I do think that people are more likely to hire for people who have a similar background to themselves. And I think that that's one of the types of cognitive biases that we do try to help employers break out of by giving them hard data to understand what the impact of that cognitive bias might be and how they can find a better way to recruit and retain workers who come from a more diverse background.
Yeah, we need to do something about that we seem to have as a nation, maybe this bias that somehow if you don't have that piece of paper, you may not be as good. And as somebody who beat the pants out of 2 Harvard guys when he first ran for college, I find, I was really happy doing that. I didn't have the Harvard degree. As a firefighter, because that's what I am, a firefighter, the United States has the U.S. Fire Academy, which has been used to really elevate, the profession. Do you believe that maybe we should sponsor a U.S. Cyber Academy for the same thing? Dortch? I'm sorry. Yes.
I think, this is something that was also brought up by the CISA Cybersecurity Advisory Committee. They made that recommendation that CISA should have a cyber academy. I think it's something that we should consider. We do need to make sure that we are taking a multifaceted approach to getting people into cybersecurity. I don't think it's the sole silver bullet that will solve this challenge, but it is something I think we should explore as a nation to see if we can get folks multiple pathways, multiple entry points into cybersecurity and train. And the biggest part to this also is just onboarding. Once we get them trained, let's get them into the roles, the jobs that are open, whether it's in the government or in the private sector.
Yeah, the Fire Academy actually did a lot to, and has done a lot to elevate against the professionalism of the craft. I believe that a cyber academy could do the same thing, teaching best practices, because really the Fire Academy is really about training the trainers. The same could be done for a cyber academy, and so it's something that probably we should be looking into to establish that. You said that the EU had some kind of a similar academy, and what is it that they do?
So it's notionally, it's not a formal academy, it's more of a platform to bring all of the resources that are already there. So private employers who have micro-credentials already, or governments in other countries that have already set up similar reskilling boot camps. So it's really building a platform to centralize that information so candidates have the opportunity to kind of pick and choose where they see their current skill sets and their interests, align those, and pick where they would like to go. Which I think, again, I keep using the word flexibility. You have to give professionals flexibility to figure out where their interest and current skill sets match up best. But also, if they are not a good fit, they have the ability to move around in the cyber security field.
Do you know if the Chinese have something similar to that?
I am not aware of that.
Okay. Thank you very much, and I yield my time back.
Gentleman yields back. I now recognize Mr. Menendez from New Jersey for 5 minutes of questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we've heard about being less rigid in hiring practices for employers, being more flexible, and we understand our mission there. I'm curious, during this hearing, I was writing down the names of high schools and community colleges and Stevens Institute of Technology, which are in the 8th Congressional District in New Jersey. Where should we be going to amplify the opportunities in the cybersecurity space? What should our pitch be? And if we're not the right messenger, who is? That's for anyone on the panel.
So I'll take that one. I think that there's a lot, and actually with Mr. Jimenez, really important about the professionalization of the sector. And so, the idea that a cyber professional is the face of a cyber professional is in a black hoodie and in a closet, that still exists, and we really need to do a lot of work to actually change that. So I would argue that if Congress can do more to actually up the game in terms of the professionalization of the sector, and this is something that we also, like Mr. Markow, believe standards are really important here. And there's an opportunity for us to, in the way that, say, the accounting profession or the engineering profession has a certain level of profile within the public, that actually is really critical for the future of cybersecurity. And there's actually a proliferation of activities that are happening at nation level. Not only we're familiar with the EU Skills Academy as well. In the UK, there's the UK Cybersecurity Council that's really driving a new licensing scheme for people to become chartered professionals. So I think if we can do more to actually raise that profile, that would be incredibly helpful.
Sure, and hopefully today's hearing is a good way of doing that, because it's one of the joys of being here is to work on this issue in a bipartisan way. But in terms of reaching folks, right, and I think about this on the apprenticeship side across all different industries, right, and how do we access people, reach them, and let them know about different opportunities across different industries. Specifically with cybersecurity, where do you think we should be going to market these opportunities and letting folks know they can avail themselves? Because it seems from the testimony, it's a wide swath of folks, right? From retraining people already in their careers, retraining veterans, finding people on a non-traditional academic path, to people in a traditional academic path. So it seems a wide variety, and basically we need to pull from everywhere. And I get that, but where do you find the most efficiency or the places that are most ripe for wanting to be informed about opportunities and professions in the cybersecurity space? Again, to anyone who wants to take that question.
From my perspective, I work with a lot of young people and veterans, and most of us know more about cybersecurity than we think we do. I mean, it's pervasive in our lives. And I think getting young people excited about it, getting them motivated about it, it starts with parents. It goes into the school system. And we're inundated with all these video games and all these other things. If you can play these games for as long as you can take that knowledge and apply it to something like cybersecurity, which is, it's a lot of the same concepts, but now it's something that is, defending your home, your company, defending the nation. So I think with parents and with schools, and whether you do it in college or whether you take a non-traditional pathway, it doesn't matter. Both of those exist.
Great, appreciate that. And just, in terms of the pipeline, we've talked about sort of the different folks that we can try to recruit into cybersecurity. But I am curious, for folks that have sort of the more traditional pathway of computer and information science backgrounds, who are we competing with? Or who are cybersecurity firms or companies competing with for access to that talent? And sort of what sort of potentially competitive disadvantage are cybersecurity professionals, the government firms at compared to those other career paths that those folks could take?
Happy to answer that question. I think that cybersecurity for a long time was not a field that had a very clear brand within many organizations, and I think that resulted in many people ending up in the field by happenstance. They had started working in networking, they'd started as a developer, they'd started anywhere else but cyber, and somebody said, "You're the cyber person now." So I think that there's a lot of branding work that needs to be done to overcome that. And I think that some of the fields that do have a more effective brand within the IT community are fields like software developers and engineers, even networking roles, and now increasingly data scientists and others focused on developing AI and other emerging technologies. Cloud computing, for example, is a big one. And I think that being able to communicate why cybersecurity is a compelling career path, even within the context of those other compelling career paths, is important. And we do see that there are very compelling reasons to move into cybersecurity. On average, they pay salaries that are about 10% higher than other IT jobs. They offer fantastic job security, and they can lead to just a sense of reward and accomplishment by knowing that you are protecting some of our most valuable digital assets. But I think that we need to communicate that story. We need to build the brand of cybersecurity jobs so that they can be as effective and they can essentially serve as a magnet to more people who are interested in a career in CS, who for the longest time thought the best path to a good career in CS was to go work as a software developer at the next Facebook.
Sure, that's really helpful. I yield back. Thank you.
The gentleman yields back. I now recognize myself for a second round of questioning. And my question for each of you is this. You've provided us such useful information already during this hearing, but I want to know, is there anything that you were hoping to share with us today that you think is important information for us to have that you haven't already had an opportunity to share? Ms. Dortch, I'll start with you.
I think the big thing right here is that, in the United States, we're seeing a transformation happening when it comes to the regulation within cybersecurity. We have CERCIA, the Cybersecurity Incident Reporting for Critical Infrastructure Act. We have the Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification. We have a proposed rule from the Securities and Exchange Commission for incident reporting of material cybersecurity incidents. The list goes on. And with the increase in regulation, that drives the need for us to have cyber professionals who can help us meet the requirements, put in the security controls, maintain the network, and make sure that we're responding and working with the sector-specific agencies or CISA in that matter to respond to these things. But in order to really execute this, we do need time. I think it's really important that when the government is looking at rolling out these regulations and these policies, that industry and the government is giving itself more time. So really the ask of Congress is to urge certain agencies like the Office of Management and Budget, which has a memoranda right now on secure software development practices. We are really trying to make sure that we are in alignment with those and making sure we're compliant, but we need a little more time to make sure that not only our contracting officers and at federal agencies are ready for the attestation statements that we have to submit, but that our software developers are meeting and complying with the frameworks that are in place and set by NIST.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Dortch. Mr. Marco?
One thing we haven't really touched upon is the speed of change within cybersecurity. And building our cybersecurity workforce is not a destination, it is a continuous journey. Skills are constantly evolving, new technologies are constantly being utilized both by bad actors as well as cybersecurity professionals, and we need to be constantly reskilling our people. In just the past 2 years, we've found that about a quarter of the skills required for cybersecurity professionals have changed. So even if we were to graduate many folks with degrees at a bachelor's level, a graduate level, what have you, their skills are going to be outmoded within just a few years. And so being able to provide the resources, the information, and the tools to employers, educators, and individuals that they need to keep up with such a rapid pace of change in the industry, I think is one of the things that the federal government can help to build the foundation for, so that we do have that information access for everybody who needs to keep up with such a rapid pace of change in the industry.
All right, thank you. Ms. Wisniewski?
Thank you. I agree with Ms. Dorch that actually the regulatory environment is incredibly active right now and is going to actually bring more requirements to the cyber community. And so the problem is going to get worse, not better. And so there is a real need for innovative strategies around workforce development and new strategies around workforce development. So old approaches don't apply. Fully agree with Mr. Markow that the profession is going to change dramatically so quickly, and the combination of that change with a very active regulatory environment that is, I think, intentionally trying to do the right thing, but the two are going to miss each other. And so unless we do something drastic soon, it's just going to compound.
Excellent. All right, Colonel Starling, anything you would add?
So it's not just about the training of people. One of the things, we overlook a lot of talent because we don't access them. And so having the training plus some wraparound services that knock down the barriers that people have, whether that is getting childcare, whether that is being able to make their rent payments, and then opening up apprenticeships and internships, paid apprenticeships and internships for those people. If we want to have a truly diverse workforce, we got to go find them. And it's not just the training, it's the other pieces that allow them to use their own grit and determination to succeed.
Thank you very much. At this time, I recognize Ms. Clark from New York for 5 minutes of questioning.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Equipping institutions of higher education with the resources they need to provide high-quality, high-level cybersecurity education as a discipline is so important, but it is only one piece of the puzzle when we think about long-term solutions to growing the cyber workforce. We also need to consider early education opportunities so that school-age children have the skills and understanding to consider careers in cybersecurity down the road. I know CISA has funded the nonprofit cyber.org to develop a nationally focused K-12 cybersecurity education and training program for teachers to provide students with a cybersecurity education foundation across all 50 states. Mr. Markow, what can employers do to better engage with K-12 sector, the K-12 sector, to use these available resources to further develop effective career pathways into cybersecurity jobs, opportunities, and careers that are sustainable in the long run? And other panelists are free to respond as well.
Thank you for the question. I think that employers can proactively go out and engage with schools in their communities to find opportunities to communicate the opportunities within cybersecurity. So going back to what we talked about around branding the field, you could have your CISO go into local elementary schools or high schools to talk about the great career opportunities that you have available within your organization. You also mentioned career pathways, which is critical. You actually need to be able to then communicate to students what that career pathway looks like so that they know that there is a future and a sustainable career opportunity for them. And you need to communicate what are the specific steps that students can start taking wherever they are in their educational journey to build the skill sets or other experiences that are going to be necessary in order to enter into the field. That could be even sponsoring cyber competitions in your local community or engaging in other relevant activities that your community is sponsoring to help grow the cybersecurity talent pipeline.
Yeah, one of the things that we do at NPower is we hold regular sessions that identify different pathways to different cybersecurity jobs, and that's to get people into our tech fundamentals class. So you can't just jump into the cyber world. You've got to have that basis of fundamentals, but definitely being out into the community and having live and virtual events that people can attend to learn more about those pathways. And Congresswoman, I'd just like to thank you for your support of NPower. You've been a vocal supporter, and we appreciate that.
I would just add that I think that, we have 200,000 members in the U.S., and our members are very active in their community because they are very passionate. Cyber professionals are very passionate about cyber. They've had that Kool-Aid and they are handing it out, right? And so I think even more opportunities, this is where I think there's an important role for public-private partnerships, more opportunities to get people out into the community talking about cyber. And it's actually twofold. This is not just about workforce, but it's also just building cyber awareness and therefore more resilience within the general population.
Absolutely. I'm a fond, fondly reminisce about the science fair when I was in school. And I think that certainly there's room for that type of creativity in our public school, in our elementary school settings. There's a program called Project REACH, which stands for Realizing Equitable Access to Cybersecurity in High School, which links K through 12 school systems to higher education institutions, specifically HBCUs and MSIs. The goal of the program is to ease the transition into higher education cybersecurity degree programs. And wanted to ask the question to Colonel Sterling, as Project REACH does for K through 12, what can we do as a nation to create a seamless transition for higher education to workforce?
Yeah, I think it's offering those training opportunities, but it's not just, again, it's not just the tech training. You need some professional development. Young kids coming out of high school don't necessarily have the savvy to go into an interview or to compete for some of these jobs. Same thing with veterans who are transitioning. They have a whole different language, and the transition period is one of those volatile times in a person's life. So seamless transitions means my SkillBridge program is like a boot camp as you leave the military to go into the civilian sector, specifically cybersecurity. Same thing as we look at our young adult programs in places like New York and in St. Louis. We are preparing them holistically. We're helping them with their life. We're also training them professionally to have the right clothes, the right approach, and practice those things. It's, repetition is the key to retention in those things. So it's a holistic approach to filling this workforce for cybersecurity.
Very well. My time has expired. Thank you, Madam Chair. I yield back.
The gentlewoman yields back. I now recognize Mr. Swalwell for an additional 5 minutes of questions.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. And I would just first ask unanimous consent to insert into the record written testimony from the Information Technology and Industry Council, their publication, Growing the National Cybersecurity Talent Pipeline.
Seeing no objection, it is so ordered, and the testimony will be admitted into the record.
Great. Thank you. Also, Mr. Marco, in your testimony, you mentioned that demand for certain emerging cybersecurity skills like cloud security, automation, and secure application development has been growing at a rapid rate and can result in a salary premium because of a shortage of trained professionals. To what extent do you believe current cybersecurity education and training programs have curricula that meet the skills that employers demand? And are there aspects of cybersecurity where we should be focusing more acutely?
I do think that, in general, most cybersecurity curricula are very focused on the skills that employers demand, but I think that it is a game of cat and mouse. The skills are constantly changing, and even if you build a curriculum that addresses the skill needs of today, it could be outdated within 1 to 3 years. When you think about the typical program development cycle and curriculum development cycle at many universities, which can take 5 years or more, that makes it very difficult to rapidly adapt the curricula to some of the emerging tools and technologies that cybersecurity workers need to utilize. So that said, we have seen that many colleges and universities and other training providers are very laser focused on trying to rapidly adapt their curriculum. And we also see some very innovative approaches coming from boot camps or other shorter term training programs that are hyper focused on some of these emerging fields such as cloud security or others that you just mentioned. So I think in general, there are some structural challenges to many programs that are trying to adapt their curriculum as rapidly as possible. But I also feel that in general, our education system is doing a good job of trying to respond to those challenges as quickly as they can through a variety of innovative approaches.
Thank you for that. I also want to go into an issue where immigration in Congress, obviously, it is a charged issue, but I think there's actually broad consensus among both parties about the need for high-skilled immigration in areas where we just don't have enough American workers. My priority on cyber is, look, if we can train an American, I want to do that and make that the priority. To exhaust the effort to do that before we ever say, we need to import, that workforce through an immigration system. But can you just all just educate me and the committee? Do we have enough folks right now that we can train to meet our needs, or would a skilled immigration, an expansion of the skilled immigration process help us meet that need? And I'll just leave that open to anyone.
So I think that it could help, but the reality is that there's basically 0% unemployment in cyber globally.
Yeah.
And so sure, but at the same time, other nations around the world have the same problem that we do in the US. There are simply just not enough professionals. And so while I think that there's always value for effective policy in the realm of immigration, I think for cyber, it's just another lever that we can pull. But it doesn't, I think the most important thing is not to lose sight of the really big picture, which is 0% unemployment, right? And so even at some point during the panel, even this morning, the poaching that happens within the industry is so significant, and people are staying in jobs for less than a year because they're getting poached onto the next thing. And so there needs to be a lot of, again, I think industry has a really important role to play. I guess I'll leave it at that.
Well, I just want to thank all of you for participating and educating us on this hearing today. And again, I want to thank the chairman before I yield back for doing this. I mean, this is something that we just hear all over, not just the US, but worldwide, and not just in the public sector, but also in the private sector. And so we've got our work cut out for us. And as I said, the good news here is there's no partisan excuse. There's a lot of good partisan excuses for why we can't take on other intractable issues. On this one, we're aligned. And so that's the good news of this piece. But we can only do it with private sector buy-in and collaboration. So with that, I'll yield back.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ranking Member Swalwell. I recognize myself for 5 minutes for my second round of questioning. And as you heard in my opening statement, addressing the National Cyber Workforce Challenge is one of my biggest priorities as chairman of the subcommittee. Part of that difficulty is addressing it is figuring out where to start. I think we've had some great testimony here today, but it's not just, we can't solve it here alone on the federal level. It can't be done alone on the private sector level, can't be done alone on the education level. It's the all of the above approach I think there has to be. But what this subcommittee does oversee certain agencies in the federal government, and specifically CISA. So I'll start with Ms. Wisniewski. In your view, how should the federal government prioritize its efforts to address this issue? And specifically, what should CISA's role be in the equation?
So I think that we have to continue, actually, I think we need more resources, right? More focus, more investment in actually solving the challenge. So again, innovative workforce strategies. Particularly for CISA, CISA has an opportunity to really serve as a convener and serve as, the ringleader, if you will, in terms of really being able to drive all of the things that we've talked about today. I think that there are just many, I think CISA has done a good job of being an example of not only the good, bad, and the ugly in terms of they have their own workforce challenges, right, of recruiting people in. So, I mean, you know, it's there, right? And so, but I think CISA has a real leadership role here. And we look forward to deeper partnership with CISA and more opportunities, and also with the Office of the National Cyber Director. We have a deep partnership with them. We think the combination of those two units to serve as a leader is really important. And then actually, you know, this is also a global game, right? And so we as the United States really need to take serious if we want to be a leader here, because we should be.
Does anybody else want to comment on that? Sure, Ms. Dortch.
I'll just quickly add, I agree with her comments. I think, you know, big thing for CISA is to make sure they have the right expertise in the room to really help look at how we can transform the cyber workforce in America. I think a great example of this is we've seen, again, the CISA Cybersecurity Advisory Committee has the subcommittee on transforming the cyber workforce, but we need to make sure that we have HR professionals at the table, that we have folks from academia to really take a look at things that are working in the federal government and industry and really figure out how we can tactically address this issue.
Yeah, I would just add that, you know, we've had a great relationship with CISA, and their grant really propelled us into some new territory, and we proved that we could do it. And we're looking forward to continue to work with CISA and other government agencies to continue to find non-traditional talent and to help solve this problem.
Would wholeheartedly agree with everything that everyone else has already said. The only thing that I would add is that I think CISA is in a unique position to help make all of the great information that is already out there as accessible as possible. I think that there's no shortage of resources and information that lots of people have already provided in the federal government to support cybersecurity workforce development, but I think that at times it can also be information overload. And so I think that CISA could serve as that convener of both stakeholders, but also information to make it as easy as possible to access the tools and resources that are most valuable. The other comment I would make on this is that I think CISA is also in a unique position to provide information to employers. I think we have over-indexed on providing information for other stakeholders and under-indexed on providing information, tools, and standards for employers so that they know how to be responsible recruiters and developers of cybersecurity talent.
Thank you all. And one final question, because I have about a minute left. But in our first hearing of this committee, we heard from someone from the Bank Policy Institute that cyber professionals in their field are spending 40% or more of their time on compliance. Ms. Wisniewski, earlier in your response, you mentioned additional cyber regulations will likely worsen the workforce problem. And right now, we're seeing, you know, the National Cyber Strategy coming out of the White House focuses a lot on regulation. The Energy and Commerce Committee just recently passed a bill out of committee, adding a new regulation on reporting. How can Congress help reduce this additional burden on a workforce that is already stretched so thin?
So I do think that there's an opportunity for Congress to actually partner with the regulatory environment to really, I think, appreciate what is really important here, because unless we can do more, so what often happens, right, is the regulatory environment kind of works in its own little world, and then you've got, you know, policymakers working in a different world. In this case, there needs to be a lot more synergy so that there can actually, if there is going to be more regulations coming, that those regulations actually can be fulfilled. Because if there's no one to meet the regulation, then, you know, how is that going to solve? The other challenge, I think, is that we really, because of the environment in cyber, we really need to make sure that we're not building a checklist environment where it's just a checklist for compliance, because then you're just not, you're missing the point. You're actually not protecting the world. So I think more synergy there, and again, just more investment on the workforce development.
I'm out of time, but I'm the chairman, so you can go ahead, Ms. Fletcher.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It's really a call for harmonization of these regulations and removing duplication. I think that's key. And I agree. I think a big part of this, NIST has done a lot of work around building the cybersecurity framework, the National Initiative for Cybersecurity Education, the AI risk management framework. We need to continue to fund that, but also, to her earlier point, frameworks are not meant to be compliance documents, so making sure that these are best practices that we can incorporate into our businesses and make sure we're fostering good cyber hygiene practices.
Thank you very much. So I want to say I thank the valuable testimony and the members for their questions today. Again, this is, I think, the second time we've done a second round of questions just because it was such a great hearing. The members of the subcommittee may have additional questions for the witnesses, and we would ask the witnesses to respond in these writings pursuant to Committee Rule 7D. The hearing record will be held open for 10 days. Without objection, this subcommittee stands adjourned.